Namaste, I'm Dhruvika, design team member at Craft Angles. Today I have three beautiful vintage cards, and for the first one, let's have a look how do we create. So for this one, I'm using the Happily Ever After stamp set by Craft Angles, the withered wood distressing, the craft sheet, and the note card. Now to begin with, I'm using the craft sheet by Craft Angles, and I've used this stamp and stamping it using the distress ink. Now I will be just making sure that I color these with my alcohol markers, and I'll just go through very simply, starting from the center and just going out. This is a technique which is called slithing, and which I'm going to do here now. I'm using these shades of pink in different various shades, from the lighter to the darker, and you'll see how these colors really change on the craft sheet. This is a very beautiful craft sheet by the Craft Angles cardstock. So here I am doing this. It's very pertinent to note that the vintage cards really do not have very much bright colors, but always go with the little paler ones. So now after I was happy with my coloring, I started with the tea dye ink, brushing it through the corners here. I've also stamped the sentiments which says thinking of you, because generally I think it goes well with the vintage thought. Now to finish the look of the card, I'm going to glue it using the liquid adhesive and putting it onto the pre-fold note cards. That is how it looks. Now for the next card here, I'm going to use the technique of layering. Yes, so to begin with, I'm using the script stamp set by Craft Angles, and this one is called the Everyday Sentiments, while I'll be using two basic shapes. One is called the wavy and the rectangle dies by Craft Angles. So I also have a base which is already, it's a scrap which I use for embossing. This is a Earl Grey cardstock by Craft Angles, which I die cut using this basic die cut from Craft Angles. So this will become my second layer. For my third layer, I'm using the dual textured cardstock, again die cut from the same rectangle. I also have few pieces of leaves from here and there scraps, and the smallest one from the black cardstock by Craft Angles die cut through the wave die cut. Now I'm using this little flower here, and I am just stamping it over the dual textured cardstock, and I'm going to color it using the alcohol markers. So this is nothing new that you've never seen. So I'll just speed it up, and here I'm also stamping the script stamp set using the same distress ink in withered wood. I think that really gives a beautiful vintagey look. It is important that other than monochromatic colors, the vintage cards also have something which is the layering. So the more the vintagey card is, the more layers you would see on the card with lesser colors. So here also I'm going with the browns, and just trying to pop the color onto the card using the pink onto the brown. So pink and brown will give a beautiful contrast. So generally what I've been seeing looking throughout on the Pinterest, I find that the vintage cards are not very colorful. I don't know the reason why, but probably because of the photography those days couldn't capture the colors that well. So now I have this last layer which I already have. Now I am taking the tea dye color and just brushing it across the dual textured white cardstock which I already stamped using the script stamp. Now I'll just affix all these three layers onto each other. This is the flower how it looks, and I'm going to keep the leaves very simple. So I'm now just adhering it using the liquid adhesive, just layering it one by one, and you will see how this card really comes up so well. So once all my three layers are done, I just press it hard so that they're fixed, and before I fix the flower onto it, I'm just curling the flower leaves inside. I think that gives a very beautiful 3D look, and once it is done, I'm just adhering it again using the liquid adhesive. Now to give it more dimension and texture, I'm going to put these leaf die cuts. You can use it anything. You can actually use the Craft Angles element sheet. It also has very beautiful pre-colored elements from here. So I'm just arranging it. I'm trying to see that they balance from both the sides of the card here. So once I'm done, this is the black cardstock wherein I'll be stamping my sentiments. I think I'll be just putting it onto the right hand side down corner so that I can balance it. So again, from the same stamp set, I'm using the stamp set which says hope your day was amazing, and just I affix it using the 3D foam tape. This is how my card looks. For my last card, I'm going to make the dad vintage card, and for this I'm going to use the navy blue cardstock and dual textured white cardstock by Craft Angles, and I'm going to use the two different stamp sets on dad. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, like you've already seen me doing before, I'm just going to stamp the script stamp set onto the dual textured white cardstock using the T dye distressing this time. So I'm just adjusting because the stamp is a little larger for my stamping station, but I make sure that it stamps well. So once it is stamped, this is how it looks. Now I'm going to take some antique linen distress ink and I'm just going to brush it in from the corners so that it looks a little weathered and little old. And then I'll also add some vintage, photo vintage, and also darken the corners. So it'll give a little distressy look. That is exactly what we are looking for. What you'll also see is in the vintage cards, it is generally a black image, which is the focal image. And so in this one, I'm using this father and the child image, which is a very beautiful large image. And I'm going to just stamp it very perfectly onto the background that we've created using the black dye ink here. So you can use any of your black dye inks, which is very juicy and very black. So once it is done, I'm just now going to adhere it using the liquid adhesive onto the note card using the navy blue. So once it is done, I will just stamp these sentiments called dad. I think the picture says it all, and just splattering some white paint.